Introduce myself. My name is Diblex Lesalon, and I'm the host Boots on the Ground podcast, and I'm so grateful to be moderating this session. And I really would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time to join us this afternoon to share your work. And I'd like to give each of you a minute or two, to quickly introduce yourselves and mention the organization that you work for and the type of conservation work that goes on. And I think it will be fair enough to start with the only lady here who is Clara. Clara, karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Divlex. My name is Clara Nanja. I am program manager at Birdwatch Zambia. Birdwatch Zambia is a membership-based environmental NGO and a member of Birdlife International, which is a global environmental and conservation partnership. So as Birdwatch Zambia, our objective is to promote the study, the conservation, and the general interest in birds and their habitats in Zambia. Our work is centered around 42 key biodiversity areas, and our focal point areas in those is to look at the species, the sites, the habitats, and people. And on all of these, we take actions on the species, particularly the globally threatened species. We take action for the key biodiversity areas. We collect data on habitats and influence land use as well as other policies. In addition, we also promote links between biodiversity conservation and rural livelihoods.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clara. We will move to Togarase Farakai, please.
Thank you very much, Dibir. My name is Togarase Fakarai. I work for Birdlife Zimbabwe, and I'm the IBA program manager. I'm responsible for coordination of IBA program in Zimbabwe, and I'm also responsible for the local engagement, empowerment and engagement program. Again, my task as the IBA program manager is also something to do with policy and advocacy in order to advance biodiversity conservation work in Zimbabwe. So as Birdlife Zimbabwe, it's a local NGO that supports conservation of birds and biodiversity throughout the country in Zimbabwe. And we are a partner to Birdlife International. And then in terms of our programs, they are centered on species, sites or habitat, also people and sustainability, where we talk more for policy and advocacy work. And you'll see that these strategic objectives, they're also aligned to strategic objectives of Birdlife International. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toga. We'll move to our very own Paul Gasheru. Paul, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Diblex. Hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah.
My name is Paul Gasheru. I work at Nature Kenya, which is East African Natural History Society, founded in 1909. We are the Birdlife partner in Kenya, and our work is based on, we work as well within the key biodiversities in Kenya, 67 sites in total. And our work is based on science and action with partners. We work towards empowering local people to promote conservation with development at the key and within the key priority sites, as well as advocate for sound governance and planning for a sustainable future. It is nice to be in this show. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Khalid, please. Khalid, I don't know if you can hear us. If Khalid is not on, maybe we can move to Raphael Latte, Ghana Wildlife Society.
Hi guys. So my name is Raphael Latte, and I am the communications officer for Ghana Wildlife Society. I also work as a graduate research assistant. So GWS is a non-governmental organization based in Accra, Ghana, and is a member of the Birdlife International Partnership. So we've been at the forefront of nature conservation for the past 3 decades. And our mission is to conserve wildlife, plants and animals, both in all of its form, to ensure a better environment for an improved quality of life for all people. So our work over the past years has transformed corporate industrial practices, national policies, and has also provided models for community ecotourism initiatives in Ghana. Our work is rooted in partnerships and relies heavily on the science that inspires positive conservation actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Maybe to return back to Khalid. Khalid, can you hear us? Khalid? Okay, we'll give you some time to fix that microphone problem. I'm sorry about that. Moving on swiftly, I'd like to circle back to Clara. And Clara, could you please highlight some of the restoration work that Birdwatch Zambia is currently undertaking?
Thank you so much, Tiblex. Birdwatch Zambia has been privileged among the many non-governmental as well as government organizations within Zambia to participate on restoration work, particularly on our efforts have pioneered work or efforts on the restoration of a wetland habitat. And this has been to control an invasive, the Salvinia molesta. 2 efforts have been put into that over the years. The startup being 2013 with the local communities, the control using manual and mechanical methods. And currently we have a project on the same site for the same invasive Salvinia molesta. And right now we are using a biological control for that. I guess I'm going to get an opportunity to give a broader explanation on that.
Sure. We'll get into much of that in a moment. And Gasheru, what are some of the restoration efforts Nature Kenya is undertaking? Could you please take us through some of those?
Oh, thank you, Diblex. For us here in Kenya, we have been promoting forest and landscape restoration through different approaches, informing policy or influencing policy, as well as direct restoration. And with direct restoration within areas like in Mount Kenya Forest, within the Tana River Delta, Yala wetland, among other key biodiversity areas within the country, where we are empowering the local communities to take charge to be able to restore these degraded areas within these landscapes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Gasheru. Toga, how does that look like in Zimbabwe?
You hear me now? Yes, I think I'm on. Yeah, I think I solved the problem with the microphone. Sorry, everyone. I don't know. This was such unfortunate. I'm with you fully now. I apologize.
Okay, Kylie, thank you for joining us. Maybe I'll give you a chance to quickly introduce yourself, and the organization that you work for and the type of conservation work that goes on there before we proceed, please.
All right. Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank all of you, and I would like to thank you for inviting me for this podcast. My name is Khalid Noubi. I'm the CEO of Nature Conservation Egypt. Nature Conservation Egypt is an Egyptian NGO, works towards conserving Egyptian natural heritage and the promotion of its sustainable use for the benefit of present and future generations. NCE is established in 2005 by a number of Egyptians leading experts in the field of nature and biodiversity conservation. We are specialized in scientific research, advocacy, education, and outreach to support species in their habitats and local communities. NCE works in partnership with local experts, governmental bodies, as well as international organizations to ensure the biodiversity conservation within and across borders. So that's very briefly who we are. At the moment, we are very concentrating or focusing on bird migration in the Red Sea Rift Valley flyway in particular, in different sectors, hunting and energy sectors, as well as many other projects for marine conservation that involve the conservation of marine turtles and protected areas of marine coastal lines.
Thank you so much, Khalid, for that. Could you please take us through some of the restoration work or other projects on the ground that you're working on at the moment?
At the moment, we are involved in a very big restoration work that has to do with the restoration along the flyway along the Red Sea. Egypt, with 100 million people, live in the country with an increasing demand to energy. The Egyptian government put a priority to generate energy from renewable resources. This includes wind farms along the Red Sea coastline and solar energy and so on. Once this energy is being produced, they need to be transferred to consumers. And this involves big constructions of power lines that go for tens of thousands of kilometers. Those power lines, of course, cause fragmentation in the flyway habitats along the Red Sea. And we are working closely with the government and different stakeholders to restore the flyway habitat. And this includes many mitigation measures, for example, some insulation for power lines that cause electrocutions, or maybe some reflectors installation to prevent collision against power lines, and also very specific programs of shutdown on demand in the wind farm turbines to mitigate the impact of collision of birds to the wind farms. Those are the main big scale project that we are working on, like on the national level.
Thank you so much, Khalid. Moving on to Toga. Toga, I recently had a discussion with Fadzai Matsvimbo, and she mentioned about, some of the work that you guys are doing. Amazing work with the vultures. They are involving local communities, in some of the restoration projects. And could you please take us through the kind of work that you're doing there at Birdlife, Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you very much, Diblex. We are doing quite a lot of work in terms of restoration. And one of the areas where we are working is the Driefontein grasslands. I think you can see my background. So that is the Driefontein grasslands. It's an IBA, and it's also a Ramsar site. And in that area, there are human settlement there, and also biodiversity that exists there. So it's a coexistence of biodiversity and humans. And I think you can really imagine the scenario or the situation there. It's a win-win situation whereby people need to survive and also biodiversity need to survive. So we've been doing some work in terms of restoring some of the degraded wetlands in this Driefontein grasslands. It's located on the central Zimbabwe. So we've initiated this project under a Darwin-funded project. And I think I will share more details in terms of what in terms of the work we did, but we managed to restore quite a number of wetlands successfully in the area, and we got some positive results from this restoration work. Then probably I also want to highlight another area where we did some restoration. It's another setup, the Chimanimani Mountains, which is located in the Eastern Afro-Montane biodiversity hotspot. So if you imagine the map of Zimbabwe, we're talking of the Eastern Highlands of Zimbabwe, which is a mountainous area. And in 2019, that area was hit by a devastating cyclone Idai, and there were lots of damages in terms of the mountain forest ecosystems, and also loss of human beings in that particular area. So we initiated restoration on those degraded lands, opened up lands, with the local communities. as a response to those negative impacts of Cyclone Idai. So it's something that is ongoing based on the available resources, but we still have lots of areas that needs restoration, but we have actually initiated some restoration activities in this area. And for your own interest, you can see that it's an area that was hit in 2019 by Cyclone Idai. And recently, we have another disaster, COVID-19, while the area that they were trying to recover, then another disaster also comes in. So there are so many challenges in the Chimanimani Mountains. It's a key biodiversity area that supports sensitive ecosystems and biodiversity, because it's a unique ecosystem that are found in the Chimanimani area. Thank you. I think I can also share more details later on. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Toga, for that. Moving on to Raphael Latte. Raphael, what are some of the restoration projects you have initiated as a Ghana Wildlife Society?
Okay, so at Ghana Wildlife Society, we've been promoting forest and landscape restoration mainly through policy and education. Also direct restoration, but we only started recently. That's in 2018. And so before 2018, through education, we were encouraging people and students to plant trees, and then plant more trees, and then restore their communities. Most of the communities that you find, the rural communities, have degraded their landscape and slowly converting them into farmlands. And so we try to encourage them to be planting some tree species with their arable crops to restore those landscapes. But then in 2018, we started our first big restoration project to restore the Yongwa and Saposu forest reserves. We decided that we're going to restore these degraded landscapes with an endemic tree species known as the Tabutiella genti. So this tree species is critically endangered, and it's endemic to Ghana. And it has very high ecological importance. So basically we've been able to restore about 4 hectares of degraded forest, and we are looking to increase these efforts. So I will talk about it in details sometime later in this conversation. But then basically, yes, these are some of the things that we've been doing at GWS.
Thank you so much, Raphael. To return to you, Clara, is there any project? I know you've mentioned a couple of projects there as you were starting. Is there any in particular that you'd like to pinpoint, and highlight its importance, and the kind of impacts that you have been able to achieve so far?
Right, thank you so much. I will be highlighting our restoration efforts on a key biodiversity area and a Ramsar site. And this is a 3,300 square kilometer swamp. It is the Lukanga swamp located in central Zambia. It's an important bird area because it houses approximately 360 bird species, and other biodiversity include different species of reptiles and mammals, and also it contributes to about 10% of Zambia's national fish. So you see just how important this site is. Our restoration efforts in this area were initiated from our routine monitoring in these IBA KBAs, and we did notice as far back as 2009 that the area had been infested with the invasive aquatic Salvinia molesta, which is native to Brazil. And over the years, we noticed because it's an aquatic fen, so it covers the surface of the water. So over the years, it kept on covering much more open water. And as a result, we realized that the habitat for biodiversity was shrinking, especially the open water loving biodiversity, including birds. In addition to that, The weed survives mainly on oxygen, so it has the potential to deplete the oxygen levels in the water. That ultimately has an effect on the fish species that have now moved off to sites that are more open area where they can access sunlight as well as oxygen. And the weed creates a very, very good habitat for breeding of mosquitoes. So you can only imagine the malaria infestation around the site. The swamp, as I mentioned earlier, is very important it's an important fishery, but also it's used for navigation from one area to the other. And because of the type of weed in question, that is a floating fen, it makes navigation extremely difficult for the local community members that use banana boats to paddle through. So an area that would take, before the infestation, an area that would take 30 minutes would, by the time it was 2013, take about 2 hours to get to the same amount, to cover the same amount of distance. The habitat was slowly getting degraded, and as we saw, we decided to look at interventions that could restore it. One that came immediately and what we implemented was a manual removal with the local community. So they would go on site and manually remove this weed, put it on the side and burn it, or sometimes just dry it. But the downside for that intervention in 2013 was what dried out was blown back into the wetland by the wind, and it blossomed again, and it was a more agitated infestation. But also the water depth in the swamp is quite different, and not all areas can quite easily be accessible. It's characterized by a lot of phragmites, which makes it very difficult for the local community members to get into the reeds and remove all of the weed that infested the area. So with that having failed, we invested in a biological control of the same weed. This was funded by the Darwin Initiative of the UK government, and this was done together with Birdlife International. So this project particularly started in 2017. We explored quite a number of biological control agents that we could use, some of which being hippo, but the area being a place that has got which has got good number of people living around there, the hippo was not an option because we assumed that they were definitely going to eat it and that would be the end of our intervention. And so the little weevil or the beetle that we decided to use to control this weed is a host-specific weevil, and this means that it only feeds on the Salvinia molesta and nothing else. The question has always been, what happens to this little beetle? Does it affect the fish? What happens when you drink it along with the water? How small it is, how big is it? It's a really, really tiny beetle, and because it's host-specific, when the weed has been controlled or depleted, it starves to death because it doesn't have any other thing to feed on, and that's why it was recommended and an option. In Zambia, it's a big thing if you're going to import or bring into a system a biological agent, because it's equally an invasive in that system. So there's a lot of looking into what factors around that or what is going to be the impact. So the one upside was we were allowed to bring that in because of its host specificity nature. With that intervention having been started, the weevils having been imported and being put onto the site, we currently have been able to recover quite some very significant piece of the habitat that has been restored. This is about 2,000 square kilometers out of the 2,300 of the swamp. We had to measure the impact of this intervention using various methods, and this included checking on how it's affecting biodiversity, as well as looking at what is the site actually looking at the moment, because we were looking at it as having been degraded or having been covered up, a lot of places having been covered up. We have been able to see quite a number of canals within the area being open water. And because of that, fishermen have got more ground to do their fishing, and the amount the fish catch has now improved by about 72% from when we started the intervention in 2017. We have been able to introduce this biological control into about 2,000 square kilometers. And because of the places that have been cleared, social activities that had been halted, like swimming and also navigation, have come back onto site, and we see quite a lot of excited community members going back in there, and swimming back and also navigation has become easy with the amount of time that they have to take to navigate from place to place. So this has also cleared areas which have been dubbed as fish breeding sites by the fisheries department, and they have been able to confirm that there's been a significant improvement in that area of the fish breeding.
Thank you, Clara. We all know that invasive species can be very devastating to an ecosystem. And as you've mentioned, a lot of lives here were at stake, whether it's the local fishermen, whether it's the 360 bird species, the reptiles, and the mammals which breed, feed, and rest in these areas. I'm curious to understand, what are some of the challenges, on the ground challenges that you encountered while taking through that process of clearing and introducing all these biological methods to clear out the invasive species and ensure that the ecosystem rather is restored fully?
Right. I'm happier to look back and think there's actually been more successes than challenges. And this is because we have invested a lot in involving the local communities as participants on the project. We have partnered with them. We have trained the community members on how they can get engaged on these activities. And now, even if it's one of the problems that we are equally suffering from, the COVID-19, the project intervention or the activities on the project are currently still ongoing on the field, because the local community members have been able to learn the skill, they have been able to work around, and they also know exactly what they need to look out for. And this has been an upside, especially that they understand that they have so much to lose from this area. It's an area that has kept them there for a lot of years. It supports about 22,500 fishing households. So you can imagine the effect on that in relation to the poverty if there's nothing that goes on in that area. On the challenges side, I would say one of the years we were unable to do some of the surveys on site because the area had really very low water levels, which made our own navigation very difficult. But I think that gave us a true picture of what the local communities actually go through. So while ourselves we would use an engine-powered boat, they have to paddle through all of that area. So the mud and the low water level made a bit of our work difficult, but it's extremely been a success, and it's science that you can see on the ground. So while we are looking at it from the side of the birds, the local community members can actually see the habitat getting cleared. They can actually see how the malaria, the mosquito levels are going down. They can actually see how much fish they're able to catch. They can relate that to the income. So while we look more on the scientific end, the people on the ground actually are testifying on how much of a success this has been so far.
Fantastic. And how crucial was it to involve the community members from each of those stages of that project?
It wasn't very difficult because we started our monitoring in this area way back, and we initially had one local site support group, which was our entry point. But also before the start of the project, we already had created good rapport with the local traditional leaders. And so the consent for this kind of intervention was not difficult. The anxiety was, what is this beetle? What is this weevil coming? What is it going to do? The bigger question was, when are we going to get a full restoration of the wetland? So those kind of questions are actually what helped us to be able to stimulate so much more interest in the local community members, so that even if we are away from site, they're able to see the progress and they're able to talk about it within their communities. So it wasn't difficult to engage the community. And looking at how much work needed to be done, we trained about 20 local community members, and this is inclusive of some local traditional leaders, as well as some government officials who are the fisheries officers based on site. These were involved in the mass rearing of these weevils. So the mass rearing process basically was mass rearing this biological agent away from the site and introducing it in various points on the swamp. So they were able to make sure that they are constantly providing the weed to these weevils in the mass rearing sites, because remember, like I said, the weevils do not feed on anything else. So away from the site, they needed to be provided with constant fresh weed and also introduced into various areas. But also with the involvement of the fisheries department, they incorporated that weevil introduction program as part of their bigger fisheries management plan for the swamp. So we had a lot more efforts coming on and a lot more people getting involved. And with the evidence that was that has been gained even up to now, there's a lot more of traction that has been, and a lot more of interest that has been attracted from the local community members, because while it's a really, really tiny beetle, they can see the bigger effort, or they can now appreciate what it is able to do. So everybody is happy to be a part, and everyone wants to work with us. So you find a lot of local community members say, no, as we work for Birdwatch Zambia, and this is because they want to be a part of the intervention, which is doing just fine within their community.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Clara. And moving on to Khalid. Khalid, which project would you pinpoint, and could you take us through its importance and the impacts that you have been able to achieve on the ground?
Yes, I'd like to talk about our project in the energy sector, but I would like to make sure that, do you hear some noise in the background, or everything is okay?
Everything is okay, sir. Please continue.
Okay, so if I may share also maybe some slides, if this is possible.
In the interest of time, yes, yeah, briefly, please, if you can take us through that quickly. Yeah, I think it will be okay. Yeah.
All right. You see my screen now?
Yeah.
So the whole point is that Egypt located in the second most important flyway of migratory soaring birds, with 1.5 million birds migrate every season through Egypt, as you see from this map. As I said, Egypt is expanding in the energy production projects, like from wind and solar energy and so on. And this involves constructing some of the huge power lines and that extend for thousands of kilometers. It looks something like this along on the flyway, and those are very, very, very threatening barriers that hinder the migration flow of birds. What we do, that we basically would like to understand the impact of infrastructure on bird migration, and we do some research on the ground to understand this. We have two types of threats from power lines that includes some collision and electrocution for birds. This results in bird fatality, of course, in different places. What we do is we are surveying as much as we can power lines, hundreds of kilometers using cars, and surveying 6 meters from each side under each power line that we do. So far, we could survey more than 350 kilometers to be able to understand which areas or which segment of the power lines cause more mortality for birds, so that we take action. This is how the methodology looks like, and imagine this kind of work is very expensive because it involves using 4x4 vehicles in a very remote areas that in most of the cases no accommodation facility are provided. So it is effort consuming and money consuming project. This is this is our first results. We could survey in this part of the Red Sea about 300 kilometer, and the red segments indicates high mortality of birds. After we survey all of this, we then do a communication with the government and the company of electricity transmission, so that they can take an action to mitigate the impact of power line on birds. They can install sort of like reflectors like this one, so the power lines are more visible to birds, so they avoid collision. Something like this. After we install that, also we do again surveys to measure the impact of the mitigation on birds. We are having very, very good results. We could save, I think, a lot of birds during the last 2 years, and we are continuing in surveying power lines in Egypt. This is our main project that I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you so much, Khalid. You've mentioned that the people that the surveyors cover lots of many kilometers, and it's sometimes it's time consuming and money consuming. What are some of the other challenges that you face on the ground, as you're working towards restoring these flyways for birds and, ensuring that their migration is safe and secure?
Also, one of the main challenges is communication, because power lines are being built, as I said, in very, very long distances, and in some cases they cut some private lands, in other cases some military bases, and so on. And of course, for those situations, we cannot continue the survey. So this kind of project made us work hard to establish good communication with many stakeholders. It was not an easy task in the beginning to find contact in different sectors, government and private sectors, the landowners, and so on. But once we found that, we found a lot of support also from different stakeholders. So that indeed was a challenge, but we are getting through it slowly.
Okay,
yeah, but else than this, I would say most of stakeholders, when they know the purpose of the research, they are more cooperative and helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Khalid. And moving on to Gasheru. Gasheru, which project are you currently working on as Nature Kenya? And could you pinpoint its importance and the kind of impact that you have been able to achieve?
Thank you, Diblex. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah.
So one of our key programs on forest and landscape restoration is anchored within one of our key water towers here in the country called Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya Forest is one of the largest water towers in our country, providing significant water for hydropower generation, for drinking, for domestic use, sustaining quite a big hectareage, around 2 million hectares of irrigation or irrigated land. So therefore, there is significant potential for food. So therefore, seeing that Mount Kenya is one of the ecosystems that is a key pillar for Kenya's economic development. this site has faced significant challenges, mainly of deforestation, because given that it's one of the protected areas, there's been limited focus towards it and investment from government towards maintaining this ecosystem, and therefore jeopardizing the economic development of our country. So Nature Kenya has been working within that landscape, trying to spur partnerships and from grassroots to national level partnerships towards supporting forest restoration within Mount Kenya. Because overall, what you have observed from studies is that there is increased siltation within the rivers, which has been depicted clearly by the water companies, by increased water treatment costs in the past 15 years. There's been increased siltation within the hydroelectric dams, which then the government ends up going to fossil fuel power generation options. And all this is all because there's no deliberate effort towards forest restoration within Mount Kenya. So we carried out a study within Mount Kenya, basically to try and inform the policy and also provide the facts to our stakeholders and duty bearers to see the essence and the importance of forest restoration, where we identified around 6,200 hectares of degraded areas that was in urgent need of restoration. And we have worked closely with the community forest associations, the forest adjacent community, to propagate tree seedlings and facilitating them to actually go into the forest and actually do tree planting. And to date, we have actually achieved around 1,800 hectares of degraded forest areas, restored. And you're monitoring this and providing these facts to the government. And using this platform is also catalyzing private sector investment or private sector engagement, because there's limited financing as following the situation analysis. There's limited financing into forest restoration, and given that a lot of our financing was external from development partners, USAID, DANIDAS, and etc. And we are catalyzing, given that Kenya now is a middle income country, catalyzing private sector to invest more into landscape restoration and landscape management, because overall their sustainability, their business sustainability is anchored within these landscapes that we are working towards restoration. And within that partnership, we have seen private sector coming in to invest in their sustainability programs, to invest into Mount Kenya forest restoration. And as I said, within that, we have been able to achieve around 1,800 hectares, which we continue to monitor. And we are using open source GIS tools and on-ground verification, and seeing how the trees are faring on, and providing the requisite support towards the communities that are maintaining these trees to increase the survival rate of the trees. And this itself is showing significant results towards biodiversity, where you have seen areas that are being restored, forest specialist species are coming back. Areas that have been restored in the past 5 years, we have seen water quality improving, where the water is much more clearer and there's less erosion. And we see this as a proxy towards restoration of other ecosystem services within the forest. And this we pride in, because if we restore Mount Kenya, then we are supporting overall the economic development of our country and ensuring that business and economic growth within Kenya is sustained. Thank you, Diblex.
Thank you so much, Gashero. And before you go, before we move on to our next participant, who is Raphael, could you take us through some of the challenges that you have encountered while working towards restoring this pristine ecosystem, which is Mount Kenya?
I think one of the key challenges has been financing. Because most of the financing which comes into the country is external. So local financing is not readily available to support forest restoration. The community is willing, but they do not have the resources to actually support, to ensure that forest restoration is achieved. And then secondly is within our policy frameworks, we lack the incentives for private sector to actively participate in forest restoration. And that's one of the approach, that's one of the key things that we are working towards, to try and inform policy towards providing this incentive for private sector to engage in forest restoration. For example, in places like Costa Rica, where they have approaches where the private investors are able to put money into restoration. And then thirdly, as our colleague from Zambia has mentioned, there's also some issues of invasive plant species, and that is being managed and has its own demands in management and control, which we are working with the local communities towards ensuring that this is sustainably managed.
Okay, thank you. And I'm curious to know, Gasheru, is Ngarendare Trust part of the Mount Kenya ecosystem?
Indeed, Ngarendare Trust is one of the forest blocks within Mount Kenya ecosystem, which is another northernmost part within the ecosystem. Why do you ask, Sidlex?
Because the locals there, we saw what they did burning the famous, canopy walk, and they were highlighting some issues which there seems to be a disconnect in the way that they are involved. Could you please expound more on that if you have any knowledge on that?
So here there is community forest associations which are members who are living adjacent to the forest, but Mount Kenya itself supports a wider community away from the just buffer zone of the forest, around 20 kilometers of the buffer of Mount Kenya. And people come from very far, and Mount Kenya is one of the which is the drought refuge place for pastoralist communities in the lowlands. So the thing is, what happened in Ngarendare, because of this pastoralists coming from the lowlands, bringing their livestock into the forest, and not agreeing within the system to avoid areas that which are in different management mechanisms. That caused a disconnect or a rift between the CFA and this committee and these other community members, which now made a big loss of investment within Ngarendare, where there was upheaval and conflict. People burnt a number of infrastructure, etc. But these are things which are being managed at different levels with different stakeholders, because there's a governance structure and there's also the management structure of the forest, which then, once everyone is informed far and wide, because Mount Kenya provides water from here and 600-700 kilometers downstream into the Tana Delta, the water needs to arrive there. And if we do not manage that entire landscape, not only Mount Kenya, but the entire landscape that it's supporting, those conflicts will always be observed. And therefore there is need, we have been promoting towards intergovernmental or intercounty relationships and intercounty coordination towards this cross-boundary natural resource systems in our country.
Okay, thank you so much, Gasheru, for highlighting and explaining that in detail. Moving on to Raphael. Raphael, could you pinpoint any of the projects that you're working towards as Ghana Wildlife Society? You've mentioned forest restoration. Could you take us through some of the activities that go on there and their impacts?
Okay, thank you. So GWS, in partnership with KNUST, which is the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, the Forest Research Institute of Ghana, and the Forestry Commission, is currently intensifying the conservation efforts of the Tabutiela genti. So I'll give a brief description of the Tabutiela genti, or detail about the Tabutiela genti plant. So Tabutiela genti is critically endangered, and it has the highest conservation priority in Ghana at the moment. It is a species that is geographically restricted to the dry, rocky, hilly forests area. So usually around the eastern and then the Ashanti and Volta regions of Ghana. Now, the main goal of this project is to improve the conservation status of Tabutiela genti, which is now critically endangered. And in order to do that, we are trying to increase the population and then the genetic variation of the species. So earlier this year, we first embarked on a nationwide inventory to basically understand and know and ascertain the current distribution, population distribution of the species. And during that exercise, we also used that opportunity to pick some seeds from the field and then come back and raise about 50,000 seedlings in our nurseries. So we have 5,000 seedlings in our nursery in Yongwa, where the restoration exercise is going. And then our partner Care University, which is a university in Kumasi in the Ashanti region, is also housing the other 50,000 species. So it's roughly 55,000, so over 50,000 seedlings. So we chose Yongwa Forest Reserve and Saposu Forest Reserve because that is the area where you can find this Tabutial argenta. And we thought that we were going to restore those the degraded portions of the Yongwa Forest Reserve. Why don't we use Tabutial argenta since it's from that area? You know, we didn't want to restore the degraded landscapes or the degraded areas of the forest reserve with an outside species, you know. So we've started. So far, we've been able to restore an area of about 4,000 hectares. Yongwa Forest Reserve itself is about 777 hectares. And then it's just only a few portions that has been degraded, but then it's very significant. It's the portions that have been degraded is very important. And we've been able to restore about 4,000 of those areas. We integrated the Tabutiala genti species into a modified tundra system. So what I mean is we gave the tree species, the seedlings, to farmers within the communities around the forest reserve. So they plant the trees on their farms, you know, and then they plant it alongside their arable crops. So plantain, maize, and since the Tabutiala genti species is a leguminous species, it fixes nitrogen into the soil. So it helps their crops to grow, you know, and then they don't have to it cuts down their production cost because now they don't have to buy artificial fertilizer to grow their crops. And then also it also helps us to, restore. So we had an agreement with them that once Tabutiala genti reaches a certain height, they will now have to vacate that land, and that land will now be added to the forest reserve. So the communities, they farm around the fringes of the forest reserve, and their farming activities sometimes even enters a little into the forest reserve, which is also not helpful. So in order to do that, we decided to use the modified tundra system to curb that. So yeah, we've done the inventory, we've raised the seedlings, and right now we are also doing awareness creation. We have to explain or create awareness, sensitize the community members on the importance of the Tabutiala genti. Why is it important? Why do we need to conserve Tabutiala genti? So we've done some awareness creation. So at the farmers, our target groups has been farmers, traditional authorities, school children, and then just the entire community as a whole. So with farmers, obviously, we engage them. They would help us to plant the Tabutiala genti in their farms. And then with the school children, we are engaging them on the importance of planting trees, and the importance of restoring their degraded landscapes. So we engage them in planting the Tabutiala genti also in their school compound, and then we've also added some other tree species to it, to the Tabutiala genti, and they plant it on their school compounds. We even give some to them to take home to plant in their houses. And then with the traditional authorities, we engage them on the importance of the Tabutiala genti. Because Tabutiala genti is endemic and is critically endangered, we have a lot of people coming into Ghana to do research on the species. So it serves as some of the tourist attractions. So it brings a lot of people to the communities where you can find Tabutiala genti. So we pitch that to the traditional leaders, And then, yeah, they seem to like the idea. They are helping us, they're supporting us to conserve this species. So,
Thank you.
yeah, the
Yeah.
main, okay. So okay, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, carry on, Raphael, sorry.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you can go ahead, you can ask. I feel like you wanted to ask.
Okay, I wanted to ask, what are some of the challenges you have encountered and how are you managing to overcome them as you go by, restoring these forest reserves?
Okay, so we've only had one challenge. It has been successes throughout. It has been really successful because we've been able to sensitize our communities on the importance of being able to restore the degraded landscapes. But then there's this one particular challenge, which is climate change, and it's with the rains, because we have 50,000 seedlings sitting in the nursery. We need to transplant. We need to stick it to the field to restore. But then we need to restore when it's raining. But because of climate change, the rain patterns have become very erratic. We can't predict when we expect the rains don't come. And when we don't expect the rains, that's when the rains come. So last year we were supposed to plant, but then the rains didn't show up, and then so we've transferred what we're supposed to plant last year to this year. And so this month, actually, funny enough, this month we'll be going to the field to plant. Hopefully we'll see how much we will be able to plant. So our major challenges has been the rain. And we've planted, so far we've planted 2,000 seedlings. Yeah, so currently there are 2,000 seedlings at the Yongwa Forest Reserve. And, we monitor their changes using GIS, and remote sensing to, give us a quick visualization and analysis for effective management of the species in the field. And it also provides us a spectrum for detailing the arrangement of the species on the field, which presents an area of opportunities to decipher mortality and then successes at a glance. Yeah. So basically, that's basically what
Thank you. Thank you, Raphael. And returning to you, Toga, which project will you pinpoint? You've mentioned about restoring degraded wetlands. Could you take us through one project, two projects that you're working on and how impactful that has been, and highlight some of the challenges you have encountered and how you're managing to overcome them day by day?
Okay, thank you very much, Diblex. I think I'll take you back to wetlands ecosystem. And I talked about the Driefontein grasslands. It's an IBA. The size of the IBA is 20,000 hectares. And again, as I've mentioned, it's also a Ramsar site, and the area that is a Ramsar site is more than that, the 20,000 hectares. Then I think I'll just give a brief background of the area. This area supports globally threatened biodiversity. The two crane species, they are supported in the area, also the secretary bird and many other specially protected species of birds. Besides the biodiversity, the area also provides important ecosystem services to the people. The Driefontein grasslands is located on the central part of the country, and it forms the central watershed of the country. And we do have so many streams originating from this area, going southwards, west, southeast. And then so it is very, very key, and it also sustains various communities downstream, not only people living in this area. So it's one of the important areas in the country. Then in terms of threats, as I've highlighted earlier on, that biodiversity and people coexist in the area. So it's different from a protected area. If you look like a national park that is fenced, but it's an area where we do have people living together with globally threatened biodiversity. So in order to save biodiversity, so it's like a win-win situation. You also need to save to improve people's lives, livelihoods, and at the same time, we also need to ensure that we maintain and sustain the biodiversity found in that area. So I would like to highlight some of the major threats in this area. They include cultivation, as I told you that the area, people, they also need to survive, and they also tend to go to wetlands, cultivate wetlands in order to improve their food security. And one of the things that I would like to point out is that the soil is poor in some of these areas where people are supposed to do cultivation, and then that is why they also tend to go to wetland to cultivate in order to get food. So it's one of the biggest challenge there. And in order to save biodiversity, we need to create a balance between the human livelihoods and also biodiversity conservation. Then the other threat the area face is the issue of overgrazing in terms of livestock. So it has got a negative impact on the wetlands. And then the third one, third major threat is also the issue of fire, and looking at the grasslands, especially during the dry season. Fires can spread very fast. And with global warming, whereby we are experiencing more of these warm days, the grass and also the other biomass actually becomes more drier and drier, and excessive winds. You imagine that whenever you have an outbreak of fire, it will actually destroy huge, hectares there. So it's really a major threat. So what we have been doing in this area in response to biodiversity conservation, we have been implementing a project titled Community Livelihood and Capacity Support for Securing Zimbabwe's Wetland Biodiversity. And this project is funded by the the Darwin Initiative. And this is where we are doing the restoration work on wetlands. And I would like to point out that wetland restoration is just a component in the project. So there are so many activities that are taking place. So now I'll zoom on to wetland restoration. As I highlighted that there's a lot of some wetland degradation. So in our restoration approach, we have been actually targeting the main sensitive parts of the wetland, and we protect that area, and we call it a SIP. And we have been actually fencing off that area so that the wetland, that SIP will continue to feed in water into the entire wetland. So there are so many points within the Driefontein grasslands, those SIPs, and I would say that the SIP is the main source of the wetland. It's like the heart of the wetland where water actually comes from. So we actually protected them by fencing off them so that we exclude especially the livestock because there were issues of degradation, as I've mentioned earlier on. So up to now, we have already protected more than 50 hectares of those SIPs that we have identified. And I'd also like to mention that this has been a process. The issue of fencing areas within an area which is a grazing area or within an area that is communally owned, you really need to engage a lot with the community so that they really understand the process and the importance of fencing such areas. So we went through all those different stages, levels of community education and awareness, involving communities in all these aspects, and also some trainings. And we did all these at these stages. So it was really a success. And these wetlands, they're also used by the two crane species that are found in the Driefontein grasslands, especially for breeding and foraging purposes. And I would say that from the areas that we have faced the SIPs, we have seen that they have been recolonized by the breeding pairs of cranes. And within a period of 18 months, we started the restoration last year in August, and by February or March, we have already seen some positive results, whereby we have seen 5 of the sites that were protected, they recovered within a short space of time, and they were actually recolonized by the breeding pairs of cranes. And we recorded successful breeding in the last survey of ground of cranes that we conducted in March 2021. We have already recorded successful breeding from those restored areas. So it was really one of the major impact there. And I would like to say that we have been implementing this work in partnership with other 2 civil society organizations and also the local government institutions. 2 of them have been very mainly active in the project, and we have also Birdlife International on board as well. So the issue of partnership has been also helpful in terms of sharing knowledge and ideas as we were actually embarking on this work. So this is ongoing work, and as I have already highlighted that wetland restoration is part of the project. I mean, it's just a component within the project, and there are also other project activities such as community livelihood, providing alternatives to communities, a lot of biodiversity monitoring trainings, and also the biodiversity monitoring. So this is also ongoing within the Drifond grasslands. And we are also still measuring the impacts as well in terms of the impacts of wetland restorations to community livelihoods and also to other communities who are not living in this area. So they are all beneficiaries of this restoration exercise. And also in terms of this area, it's also important in terms of climate regulation. You see that the area has got some sort of a local climate within that area. It's quite different. If you move away, maybe 20 kilometers away from the area, you will experience a different environment there. So our wetland restoration has been also being contributing towards, climate change adaptation and also improving resilience of the wetland ecosystems to climate change. So this is, as I've said, this is ongoing work, and we are still working on it with all the stakeholders engaged. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toga, for that extensive, coverage on that, issue. And very briefly, Clara, could you please take us through how partnerships and collaborations have helped your conservation efforts in Zambia?
Thank you. So we have been engaging with various stakeholders and collaborating with many partners on our project. Our project had a steering committee that was composed of both government and non-governmental organizations. And away from that, we worked with the communities, on which some of them we trained to be part of our project activities. And the larger community was involved on the awareness raising program. So we sensitized the traditional leaders, the local community members. We went on to talk to schools. This was extended to people that lived off of the site, because the site is not protected, so anyone can access it. So as much people as we got involved, the better. So we did talk to or raise awareness to approximately 5,000 individuals. The benefit or the impact of this partnership and collaboration has been that Birdwatch Zambia has been invited to sit on the National Steering Committee for Biodiversity. This is a national steering committee that looks at issues to do with biodiversity and management of invasive species being a part of it. And this has been stimulated from the work that we have currently been doing on the restoration work. In addition, we have 2 government institutions that are developing conservation plans for the project site as well as the catchment. And these 2 government institutions are using the lessons that we have learned, and also the impact of our project to incorporate into the documents that are currently being formulated. We have also been involved with formulation of documentation that has been sent through to relevant government institutions, and these are documentation that are policy advisory notes that are seeking to acquire or are seeking to protect the current site. I mentioned earlier that it is both a Ramsar site, a key biodiversity area, but unfortunately it is not a protected area. So we have, with other stakeholders, been putting together some documentation, and most of the work that we've been doing there are being used as proof, or they are being used to influence the decision of the policymakers. So in addition to that, we have also been involved on other related invasive species work, and this is around the catchment of our project area, and also areas far off where the same invasive weed is being a problem. And because of the effort that we have put in, and this has currently been the largest intervention in Zambia for the restoration of a big wetland, and in relation to the weed in question, the Salvinia molesta. So there's a lot of traction and interest from other people or other communities that live around areas where they are suffering from the same threats and impacts of the same weed. So that's basically what has been the impact of our partnership and collaboration.
Thank you so much, Clara. Gasheru, how has partnerships enabled you to conserve the Mount Kenya ecosystem and restore some of the degraded landscapes around that area?
I think for us, I think one of the key elements of partnerships, especially with local communities, is enhancing the sustainable management and ensuring that restoration efforts within Mount Kenya forests are actually achieved with the requisite impacts being recorded. Two is partnerships at the global level, especially through the Birdlife partnership, where there's opportunity for skills learning and skills sharing within the network, within the global partnership, with partners in Brazil, partners in places in Asia, and others within Africa, where we are cross-learning and sharing skills about forest and landscape restoration, which has been very helpful under the Forest Accelerator program. And then three is partnership within the donor communities, where we have been able to get financing, program financing from donors like the Darwin initiatives, which have been mentioned within this call, Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, Warland Trust, among others. And then finally is the partnership building within the private sector within our country, having demonstrated the impact of forest restoration and having encouraged and catalyzed the discussions in the private sector. We have seen now partnerships within that sector and with Nature Kenya and local communities towards forest restoration. And those partnerships are very important overall, because by having that grassroots through to the global system, it is helping us to promote and entrench and mainstream forest and landscape restoration in all stages, within the spectrum that we work in. Thank you.
Thank you, Gasheru. And moving on to Khalid. Khalid, you mentioned that there was some communication problems with various stakeholders in the government, and I'm sure you have been able to secure very helpful partnerships within that sphere and also in the private sector. Could you take us through some of the partners that you're working with at the moment in ensuring that the migratory routes of the birds are secure and safe?
Yes, I think one of the most important partnership we have is with the Ministry of Environment and the Nature Conservation sector, who are responsible for managing the protected areas of Egypt. From one side, we are participating in building the capacity of the protected area staff in the methodology of the power line survey, because this kind of technique and methodology is quite precise. So we are giving training to the protected area staff to be able to do this kind of work. And from their side, they support us by their vehicles and their manpower. So and this help us a lot to survey some of the very remote areas that usually we don't have access to. But with the help of the protected areas, we are expanding the research areas in the country. Moreover, also they are helping us leading the communication with different authorities and stakeholders who are responsible for the power line construction and power line maintenance. And after our research, they are also leading the communication to make each partner do their role in terms of mitigations and so on. So this kind of partnership with the government, something that we are very, very proud of, and it is very efficient in our work. And also for the private sector, because the NCE now has the most expertise in the power line mitigation research and protocols. So we got some offers from private sectors to do research on their behalf, and we get paid for this. So this is also, again, a very good way to get more involved with the private sector and to be able to secure some money that we can later use also to explore more areas.
Thank you, Khalid. And Raphael, as we close off this part, how have partnerships played a role in restoring the degraded landscape? And who are the partners that you have worked with in restoring the Yongwa Forest Reserve?
Yeah, partnerships have played a very key role in our restoration efforts. So we've been working with the Resource Management Support Center of the Forestry Commission, and they have been providing us with information on the current populations, the extant population, or the information on the diversity of the Tabutella genti. And then we've also been working with the Forestry Commission itself. They've been providing us with the forest guards, and then they've been providing us access to the forest reserve. We've been working with KNUST, and they have been helping us with the inventory. They've been helping us to raise the seedlings, and then they will also be helping us to go and even restore the degraded landscapes or the degraded portions of the Yongwa and Saposo Forest Reserve. And one private sector organization that we've been working with is Heidelberg Cement in Ghana, which is the Ghana Cement Company. And they are providing us with financial support to raise the Tabutella genti seedlings and to restore and to also get more people from the communities to financial support to be able to pay the people from the community, to get the people from the community to help us to restore the degraded portions. SM actually mines limestone, around the Yongwa Forest Reserve. And so in supporting us, it ensures it offsets their impact on, the forest reserve. Yeah, and then this whole project in entirety is being supported by the financial support from the Franklinia Foundation. So yeah, basically, yeah, these are all the collaborations on this project. Yeah.
Thank you, Raf. And moving on to Toga. Toga, you mentioned you're working with civil society organizations and other government institutions, plus Birdlife International. Are there any other partners that you're working with at the moment?
Those were the key partners, but of course we do have stakeholders, like the local authorities, the rural district councils on the ground, and we've been also engaging the Forestry Commission as well. As a stakeholder in the process. So they've been also coming on board in terms of providing their technical expertise in the project.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I would say that that was really very helpful, yeah, on our side, because we've been dealing with complex issues on the ground, and also looking at that we were working on livelihoods. So under the livelihood, we had two partners actually focusing on the three livelihoods activities that are on the ground. Then as Birdlife Zimbabwe, we've been also focusing more on the biodiversity and wetland management issues. And we have also other issues like issues of institutions management. So that is where we have the role for especially the local authorities, including the Rural District Council. So they've been very helpful in terms of driving that work, and also in terms of advancing our policy and advocacy work. We have seen the partnership very fruitful in terms of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toga. And as we near the close of this session, I would like to ask each and every. I would like to give each and every of you a minute or so to kindly tell us how our listeners, can support your conservation efforts. And I'd like to begin with Clara, please.
Right. So the message from Zambia is that everybody needs to take action for the environment, and that action needs to be taken now so that each one of us can secure our tomorrow. Thank you.
Fantastic. Toga, please.
Thank you. I think the key message that I'd like to put across is that I think conservation work has been mainly centered on project-based, and I think there's need for long-term programs to ensure continuity, because where we have gaps in between, that is when we lose a lot of biodiversity. So I think that should be everyone's responsibility to ensure that biodiversity is conserved, and also everyone should really come on board in terms of supporting biodiversity conservation, because everything starts from the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gashero, please.
We're in the decade of ecosystem restoration. Each individual has a responsibility to participate and become active in landscape restoration in whichever kind or manner. You can join institutions like us, Nature Kenya. We have membership. You can become a member to contribute your financing or skill towards supporting our work, as well as individually participating within your neighborhoods and homesteads towards promoting forest and landscape restoration overall to benefit biodiversity. So that then, as Clara says, for our future generations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Gashero. Raphael, please.
Okay, so we at Ghana Wildlife Society, we want our listeners to basically start to take action. That's very important. Get up, take action. We're a membership-based NGO, so all listeners who are in Ghana, based in Ghana, can join GWS and help, push our conservation actions. We need more volunteers. We need species champions. We need people to get up and say, okay, you know what, I'm adopting the species. I'm adopting Tabotiela. I'm adopting the hooded vulture, and then we'll campaign and make noise, to raise funds and to advance conservation actions for this species. So yeah, basically, this is what I want our listeners to do to help us. Yeah, basically. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Khalid, please.
Yes, I would like from all of our listeners to participate in many different levels. At least each one of us can be part of the solution by adjusting our own behaviors and perspective towards environment and natural resources. And then if we can help more, we can spread the word, something like this, like share, use the social media to spread the word of conservation. And if you want to do more, you can always volunteer in any of the project or programs so that you give us more boost and more impact on the ground.
Thank you so much, Khalid. And as we gear up towards marking World Environment Day, whose theme is restoration of our ecosystem. What key message would you like to pass along? And I will start with Clara, please.
My message to our listeners is while we take action, we should look to plant a tree, clean our surroundings. We can volunteer on restoration programs. Let us all reflect on the goodness that comes onto us from what the environment gives us. We have so much to give back to the environment, and the time to give back is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Clara. Toga, your closing remarks?
Thank you. What I'd like to say is that we are actually living in the world with a changing climate, and environmental restoration is key in ensuring climate adaptation to climate change, and also resilience, improving resilience of our environment. We really need to do a lot more on restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gashero, please.
So mine is from a quote from Wangari Maathai that if we do not take care of our nature, nature will always hit back. So taking care of our environment, our landscapes, nature will always pay us back. So everyone should take action now for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Khalid?
Yeah, the message is, I think our today's actions towards environment and natural resources are going to be the assets for our future kids or younger brothers or any young person in this world, so they can have a better life. So think of them, look at them when you are doing anything toward the environment, either positive or negative.
Thank you so much. Raphael, please.
Okay, so my parting remarks would be that we are the generation that can make peace with, nature. So let's get active, let's get bold. This is our moment. So today, as we celebrate World Environment Day, there will be tree planting exercises going on in the major town of the major streets of Accra. So I would encourage everybody to go out there and then take a seedling and then plant in their back garden, in their house, just go out there and just take action, just do something. Let's make peace with nature. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raphael. Indeed, action starts now. We need to rise up, put all hands on deck. And what a timely discussion, what a timely talk. Thank you so much, everyone, for gracing this occasion. I believe as we all look to reimagine and rethink our relationship with nature in the coming years, this will be a very important discussion and, guiding post or points really to guide us towards ecosystem restoration. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Over to you, Lewis.
Thanks, Deeplex. Thanks all for participating in this special podcast to mark the World Environmental Day. And I'm sure your message will be showcased to a wider audience, far and wide, globally. Thanks for your time. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you.